Hi everybody, my name is Brittany and I'm the creator of Doctor's Cot Gallifreyan, and today I'm going to take you through how I would normally go about a translation request. So I primarily work in Illustrator. I've used Corel before, but I know a lot of people use Inkscape because that is a pretty good open source free to use vector program, and it's a whole lot easier than trying to do vectors in Photoshop or trying to do this in Microsoft Paint, because when you do it in a vector program it allows you to change the line weights very easily, which is very helpful in Cot Gallifreyan because line weights feature very heavily in deciding on what sounds are what, as opposed to Sherman's where it's fairly the same line width throughout with little variations, but have the wrong line weight in Cot Gallifreyan and you could end up having a completely different sounding translation. So, plain old Illustrator file. I currently have it set up to 24 inches wide by 12 inches high. You can always adjust this later, and I'll actually be creating a new artboard later on when I do the final bringing everything together. So you can adjust it, but basically something that's a rectangle because you're going to be writing it out. So the first thing I like to do, I should note that on the left hand side, most programs will let you paste, or in this case, place images into your vector files. So these are just the guides. I literally just copied and pasted so that you don't have to keep zooming in and out of windows, and you can just quickly reference everything that you need. So I have the IPA guide, the American English guide, and the punctuation guide. So to start off, I write out what we have. So the phrase today is, "Hello, I'm the doctor." And I think there was an exclamation point. I'm going to go with an exclamation point. So the typeface that you'll usually see me use for the main words is Gill Sans, which is a British typeface, which is one of the reasons why I chose it. You'll see it a lot on the Keep Calm and Carry On posters, stuff like that. It's basically what Helvetica is to Swiss and has been adopted into American as like the kind of go-to typeface. Gill Sans is kind of to Britain. So I always write on the left-hand side what the phrase is, and then in parentheses I write what the IPA breakdown would be. And that is set in a typeface. Let's see if I can remember where it is. Charis. So Charis SIL. As far as I know, I believe it's a free typeface. And what's good about it is it's a typeface that was designed with IPA in mind, so it has all of the characters in IPA. A lot of the more popular typefaces like Helvetica or Arial or Times New Roman, they'll have some IPA characters, but not all of them. So if you're going to try and show the IPA written out, you're going to have to find a typeface that can handle it all, because you don't want to start setting everything and then be like, oh, this doesn't have this certain character. So I'll put the link in the doobly-doo for you to get to. So before I go about picking out the sounds, I try and break it down phonetically for myself. So we have hello, I'm the doctor. And I'm torn between, when I break it down, I say couture, couteau, and I have more of an O sound, but when I actually say it like doctor, it's more of like an as in a fur. So that's usually the vowel I go to. So if I go in here over to the left, the schwa is kind of like a so like winter. It's more of an as opposed to an It's a different placement on the palette. So usually I'll go for this one, which is like in fur. That's as close as I get to it. I mean, there's going to be leeways because everyone will change it depending on how they speak, but that's usually the one that I tend to go for. Or I could just do doctor, if that makes some things easier. So first it's he, and so we know that's set. That's that weird backwards 3. So unfortunately I don't know all the shortcuts to these, so I am going through the glyph panel, which you can open up in window, type glyphs, and that will open up this panel right here where you can go through and find all the characters, and you just double click and it adds it to whatever you're typing. So it's hello, and you'll notice that the O on here is an OU because it actually goes oh, go, go. It's very subtle, but it's still there. So that's the one I'm going to do. Hello, and then we have a comma, and then I'm, which is pretty easy. So we have the I, which is AI, I'm, which looks like aim in IPA, the, or the. So the is where I would definitely use a schwa. So we want to make sure that we're using this the and not math, not the th, but the. That kind of Z kind of feel to it. So that one is this kind of backwards D with a line on it. So we'll go right here. And the schwa, which is right here. The father, or law, doctor, father, father, doctor, or law, doctor. And it's a bit too long of a vowel, so I am going to go with father, which is that A, which I believe is the Greek alpha, the lowercase alpha. Oh, that is uppercase, not what I want. There we go. And then KT. And then I remember I decided I wanted to use the fur, which is this backwards 3, or what the kind of looking like a 3 bit is. So again, if I can find this again. No, wrong one. There we go. Doctor. Hello, I'm the doctor, exclamation point. So right now we have hello, I'm the doctor, hello, I'm the doctor. And then on a line below, I usually just do this to remind myself that I have English there and IPA within parentheses. And I will usually switch this back to Gil Sans and make it at least half the size. Bump it up a tiny bit. 36 might do. There we go. Center all this. And also I reduce that opacity by 50. Just so that it's not super prominent. So that's where I start off before I do anything. So if I look quickly, I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 2 circle word, 1 circle word, 1 circle word, 3 circle word. So that will be just fine and dandy. So now we actually get to the whole making the circle bit. And just for time's sake, I'm not going to put the breakdown beneath. When I upload this file later, I will add it to the bottom, but for right now, just for time's sake, because I don't want this video to go super, super long, I'm going to cut it out, and because you'll hopefully be listening along with me. So the first pair we have is he. So we go to our H, which is double double with one line. Circle tool. So the circle size I usually work with is, I don't know how I got to this size, but this is just the size that I do. It's 1.607. 1.6067? No, 106.7. So that's the size of the circle I work with. And I have my thin lines at 1 point and thick lines at 3 points. I don't know why, but that is just the size I use. And it looks pretty good when you put everything together. So I'm just going to copy and paste. See what that does. Make sure that you are keeping everything at the right line weight, because when you do shrink it down, it will scale the line weight down. So now we have a double double. That one's all right. So right over here, you're just aligning the stroke to the center or inside or outside, so that can sometimes help make the distance nice between the two. I don't like them too close and I don't like them too far away. So that is one out of the center. So then you can actually just copy and paste and shrink this guy down. So notice how the lines are getting tighter and closer together, and you'll notice that the point size is now at 0.389. That it scales it down, so you need to make sure that you correct it later on. So I'm going to shrink this guy down a little. That was too much. 5. And once you get a few of these circles together, you'll be able to copy and paste. Basically, a lot of my translations are a lot faster now because I've done so many. I pretty much have templates for everything. Like, I already have this double double going on, so I wouldn't have to remake it from scratch, but for the sake of this tutorial I will. So there we have it. Also, the pasting I was doing was paste in place, so it's, you just hold down shift when you do when you paste it in, and then align it in the center, one straight line out, and make sure it's at 1 point. Yep. There you go. Always making sure that it actually connects to the different parts. So that's H. And if I wanted to, I could technically make that a double line, but since there's no other consonant, it's fine the way it is. So now we go to that one. So this is the first bit of clipping mask, if you're not familiar with the clipping mask. So clipping mask is how I get those like nice half circles. So the first thing you want to do is you actually want to just create your half circle however you want it to be, and make sure that it's whatever line weight you want it to be. So it's supposed to be a thick half circle kind of coming in. I'll put it down here just for kicks. Make it all nice and lined up. Yeah. So the half in with a thick line. So now that we have this, what I'm going to do is, so that you can see it clearly, I'm just going to add 2 inches to the X. So it's just shifting it over to the right 2 inches. And then I'm going to take a copy of this inner circle, do edit copy, paste in place, and also move that over 4 circles. So you can choose to have this be a line or not. You want to bring this to the front. So basically we're going to say I want everything, only stuff in this circle right here to be shown. So it's going to cut off this whole outer section. So you need to make sure that the shape that you're masking everything into is moved to the front. So I just moved it to the front, but arrange, bring to front. You select both of them, right click, make clipping mask. And there we go. And now, since we knew that we just moved it 2 inches out to the right, you subtract 2 inches, and we have our nice little half circle going on. So there's he. And actually, I have decided I don't like that shape too much. So I'm going to release the clipping mask. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. Again, making sure that it's at a 3-point. And I'm going to shrink it down just a tiny bit more. There we go. So, same principle. This has already been moved to the front. Select it again. Make the clipping mask again. Bring it back. And I like that a little bit better. I actually might move it in. Move it up a tiny, tiny bit. And again, I've already come up with a lot of shapes that I've enjoyed, so I usually just copy and paste from those. So when you're first starting out, it will take a little bit of time to get your own thing together. And again, see how that was a little too high. So I'm just going to drop that down. And back over 2 inches. There you go, much better. Kind of like it a little bit more. Alright, so there's he, and now lo. So we have our L, which is, again, a double-double with a straight line through. So this is actually going to be very easy, because what we can do is select this, but I'm going to unselect. So I selected everything, but then I just unclicked. I clicked once while holding the Shift key down. So if you select everything and you hold the Shift key down and you unclick on something, now everything but that layer mask is selected. So I'm going to do copy, paste, and slide this out right here. So now we have a perfect clone except for that layer mask. Well, that clipping mask. So I'm just going to literally grab one endpoint and drag it down. And then take these guys, fill it with white, and arrange, bring to front. There we go. So now we have the L, and now we're doing low, which we decided on doing the OU, as in go, which is a double-double right on that inner circle. So usually for these, to give you a little bit more room to play with, I will copy and paste that center circle so we have something to deal with. Increase this, make sure everything's brought back down to 1. Gonna bring that, increase it, so maybe center. There we go. You want to try and make the inner and outside consistent. At least that's what I try and go for. And then we take this and scale it down. Make sure that's on the inside. Again, making sure everything is at 1 pixel. I'm actually going to group this, so that's just Command G, or if you selected it, you could do right click. Well, it's grouped now, but you could ungroup it. And then I just slide it in place. And now we have hello. So we now have our first word. So what I like to do is I like to do all the pairs first and then go in and fiddle around with everything else. So the next one is I'm. So since it starts with a vowel, we use the aleph. So the aleph is going to take the part of the outer circle, and the M is going to take the position of the middle circle. So you notice that the M is thick, and that they both have one open and one closed dot, but that's okay because we don't have a two closed dot decoration, so it won't be confused with anything. So if you ever see something with two open dots and two closed dots, it means that it's the same bit. So you'll know that it's aleph M and not M aleph or something like that. So it starts with a thick thin on the outside. So all I'm going to do is literally, once you have a template, you can just copy and paste. So I drag this over the outside, bump that up to 3, and then M is a thick line, so we're going to do that at 3. We'll probably shrink it down a little bit. And I is thick in the open space, thick circle in the open space. So I'm going to lower this a little bit. That seems good. Again, make it to 3. And just make a tiny little dot at one circle. There we go. Copy, paste. Fill that with black. And then I'm just going to nick this, because you notice that things start your vowels will start being around the same size and things of that nature. 1, 2, 3, center line, up there. So one thing you want to make sure that you're doing is you want to make sure that your decorations, like the little circles for your decorations, are clearly smaller than your vowels so that they don't get mixed up. So I'm actually gonna, whoop, that was a little too much. It's not liking me for that. So 0.01, that seems good. So do 0.01 on the outside. Or 0.1, my bad. So I'm going to delete those because those are too big, or I've decided I don't like them. And that goes there. So that's I'm. So you don't need an apostrophe for the I'm because it's a conjunction like can't. You hear it as an NT, and you hear this as just like an IM. So you only use that if there's something like a ha-ah, like that audible stop in between. And then once you're done, I like to group it just in case. So now we're on to our third word, the. So the is double double with this half thing again. So this one is a little bit tricky, and I'll show you how I make that kind of weird half circle thing. But first things first is it's a double double, so we can literally just copy and paste. I'm going to copy this one because it's a little better to work with. So the is a straight line through the middle, but with an extra half circle around the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Fill those, arrange, bring to front. So I'm going to say copy and paste. And I'm just going to beef it up a bit, make it to 1 pixel, and take away the fill because I don't need it. So right now we have this circle, which will be fine, but we also want it to go away. And you'll also notice that for the, it's a bent line and not a straight line. So you can do this a couple of ways. So one way I'm going to do it is I'm going to select this anchor point and drag it to the center of the circle, copy and paste in place so it's right on top of it, and then I'm going to rotate. So I'm going to hit this little rotate button, and you want to put the crosshairs right over the middle so that it's going to rotate around this point. And then you drag, rotate, and you're now good to go. So we're going to take these, transform, arrange, bring to front. So now we have this bit. So we're actually going to cut up the circle, but first we're going to add an anchor point to this intersect. So you want to hover until it says intersect, click, and it's just added a point to that circle. Now what I want to do is I want to click off the circle, find a random point. So I've just highlighted, and you want to make sure you're on the direct selection tool, which will select individual points that you can move around, as opposed to the selection tool, which covers pretty much a whole path. So it would select the whole circle as opposed to the point. So you want to come up here to where it says cut path at selected anchor points. So we're just going to hit that once, and it's now broken it into little sections. So if you click off again and click one of the anchor points and you hit delete, notice how that part has now gone. Now we have a point down here, which is fine, and we have that point, which is right there, which is also fine. So you just go around, you click that point, delete it, click that point, deleted, and now we have our lovely half circle, which is just a line segment that was part of a circle, but we just sliced it up. And now we're going to do the, which we decide to do the schwa. So the schwa, upside down E, there we go, is two thick lines on the outer circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bump these up a bit just to give us a little bit more room. Put that on the inside. Put that on the outside, and make sure that these are all down at one point. So that's pretty, you could go a little bit bigger with it if you wanted to, but since we already cut it, it's perfectly fine the way it is. So again, a lot of this is just copy and paste. So I'm just going to paste this here, bump the line weight up to 3, and stick it right there on the edge. These ones get a little bit tricky, so sometimes I like to play around with it a little bit. But that pretty much looks good. So we now have the. And now for doctor, or doctor, docta. So we have the all set. So now we're going to do D. So D is thick with 2 open dots. So I'm just going to copy and paste. Slide this guy over. And since it has 2 open dots, just ungrouping that. Delete those, delete that, and now we have D but with the wrong vowel. So we're going to delete that because that's not the vowel we want. The vowel we want is the ah as in father, so doctor. So that is a thin line from there. So again, I'm just going to be stealing pretty much from myself. So copying and pasting that layer mask, bringing it over, and it will pretty much line up. It'll let you intersect it. And again, if you remember the magic number, 1.607 brings it right up to where we want it to. Move it over 2 inches. And remember, it's a thin, so we're going to release the clipping mask, reduce it to 1 point stroke, and then make the clipping mask again and send it back. So now if we wanted to, we can even do this on the outside so that touches, so it looks a little bit better. And I'm actually going to rotate this. So there we have DA. And now the KT, So K is thick thin with one line extending, and a T is a bent line. So this one we're going to have to make sure that we define which line segments go to what. So first, let's copy this guy again, because it just so happens to have the same line weights that we're talking about. Ungroup, we do not need these, or that vowel. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the straight KT, because the bent line for the double line for the K, the bent line for the T is going to be pretty easy. So I'm going to start on the path, and I'm going to go straight up to that edge, and then I'm going to do another one straight up. And I'm holding the shift key so that I get a nice straight line. And I bump one up to 3, and now we have our K. So now we're doing the T. Going to start from the center, straight out to the side, and then I'm going to do another one, and kind of like that angle. Okay, cool. So this one's already filled with white, which is good, so we're going to arrange bring to front. And we now have K and T. And you can also do the same thing as I did before. You click the rotate button, click the crosshairs in the center to declare where you want to rotate around, and you can do some nice little stuff like that. I actually kind of like, if I can get it straight up like that, kind of like that layout. And now the backwards 3, so the and fur, which is a thick line, thick circle on the inner circle, on the inside of the inner circle. So copy and paste so that we're already kind of ahead of the game. Increase, increase, increase. 3, and we'll bring this down a bit. So technically you can place it in the center if you wanted to, but it gets a little bit confusing because technically someone might take that as a double thick line. So I like to make it off center, so that I'm actually going to make it in line with that. Let's see how that looks. That actually looks pretty good. So we have the doctor for fur. And now for the R, which is thick with a straight line through. So we can copy and paste. And straight line through. Range, bring to front. And there we have our R. So I'm going to group that. And once you're done, it's kind of a good idea to group as you go. That way, like if I selected this and it wasn't grouped, I would miss this little dot right here if I didn't select that. So if you group it, it's going to select the whole thing. So grouping this. That's already grouped. Grouping that. And grouping that. So now we have our lovely words. I'm just spacing it out a bit so that we can tell what is what. So now that we have our words, before we go combining them into other circles, I'm going to add the punctuation that we have. So we need a start indicator, a comma, and an exclamation point. So the start indicator is thick, thin, thick, thin. A comma is thin, double, two thin lines, and an exclamation point is two thick lines. So this punctuation actually helps beef up the word, and it helps make very short phrases that would normally be kind of boring, especially for a 4-word thing, become a little bit more interesting. It's not a requirement, but it's definitely helpful. So there we go, up one. Range to the outside. I'm going to move that inside. That's a decent ratio. Copy, paste. Shrink it down. Bring it up to at least 1 point. So that's 3. So that's on the outside. And do that on the inside. Three on the outside. I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger. Still a little too much. There we go. That looks a lot better. 3, 1. Just going to shave a tiny bit off. I'm going to shave a little bit off of that one as well. Remember that that's going to be 1. There we go. So now we have our start indicator, and I'm just gonna, I usually do left to right, because that's how I read naturally. And the comma would go in between here. Gotta group that. Copy, paste, and then the exclamation point comes all the way down at the end. Whoops. Like we're used to. Through. There we go. Alright, so let's shuffle these a little bit so we have a bit more to work with. And over. Alright, so here we have it. So start indicator, hello, comma, I'm the doctor. So now comes putting everything together. So I forget what the actual size I use for everything else is. I want to say it's 2.4. Yep. So 2.4, if you want to remember that magic number, is what I usually use to start these off. So the first thing I do is I have my normal circle, and I'm going to copy and paste again, bump it up a bit. So this is where I'm making like that outer circle that I have. And I usually do 6 and I think 3. 6 and 3. There we go. So this is basically just what's going to go over it. This is what we're going to use for our clipping mask. So we're going to copy and paste and make this one smaller. So I usually bring that down to 1 inch. And I'm going to move this into the center here. And this I'm going to have kind of half in, just a little bit. But the trick is you need to make sure that all of the parts can be seen. So this will actually have some kind of nice symmetry going. Rotating it a tiny bit. And this is where you really get to play around and put any arrangement, because the only rule is see what happens. Yeah, so I'm just going to fill this with white because as you notice you were able to see through. So this is where you get to play around with, because the only rule is that the first consonant pair, the first pair has to be bigger than the next one, then the next one, then the next one. But placement is really up to you, so long as all the elements can be seen. So again, we're going to bring this to the front, and we're going to select the whole thing and say, make clipping mask. I'm going to take this, drag it over to the center, and bring this to the front. So now we have hello. Which I'm still not 100%. That's a little better. So there we have hello. This one, these two, and this one can all be copied and pasted and brought down because they're just one-syllable words. And now I'm going to copy and paste this, but I'm going to ungroup it and actually going to bring it a bit lower so we have some room to slide things around. So I'm going to take this basically decorative part and then I'm going to move it over to the right about 4 inches just so it's out of the way. Going to release the clipping mask. Copy all of these guys. And I believe how I do this one is I have this at 1 and this at 0.5. So I do not need that. I'm going to take this and I'm going to give it a little line weight so I know what I'm working with, so I can see everything. Don't need that anymore. Bring this into the center. I'm going to rotate it. Just noticing now it kind of looks like a bear face. Going to put this in here. Filling it. Rotating it, and then always making sure if you hover over it will show you the line, so you just want to make sure everything's inside. And then I'm going to put this guy right there. I'm actually going to rotate. I like symmetry and I like going for symmetry, so that's just my personal preference. So I'm just lowering these dots, and I actually might just do that. And this is why you'll notice that sometimes what I have up top doesn't match exactly what I have in here, and that's just because I rearranged it for aesthetics. So again, we're going to arrange bring to front, make clipping mask. Now we're going to add 4 inches, which will bring it back up to 16. And voila! We have doctor group. So this comes right here. Center that. So now we have hello, I'm the doctor. So I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. Just because I don't need all that much space. And I'm going to make the height of this 9 inches. So 9 by 24, that's fine. That's up a bit. That's up, and I usually like to do a little line right here. And I'll center it at 12. Just a nice little line. Reduce the opacity. And 2. There we go. Just to keep things kind of nice and a little bit separated. There we go. So we have hello, I'm the doctor. So now we want to do the final bit here. So I'm going to edit artboard. So that's where you can manipulate this. You can also create a new artboard. So I'll automatically do a copy of it, which is kind of along the lines that we want, which is fine. So we just click and paste that. And we're just going to take a copy and drag everything down here. So for the most part, this is decently well balanced already, but there are some things you might want to adjust. So I'm just going to make sure I'm grouping all of our bits here. I know these are already grouped, but just in case. So you want kind of like an up and down flow to happen. So I want that. I don't mind if this is like a baby. That could be a little bigger. This could be on the little smaller side. I'll bring this. Tiny bit smaller. So I want this up front, and those two covering. So bring to front, fill that, this down here, this up here, down, so obviously there's a lot of overlap that we're seeing right now. So this is brought to the front, so I'm just going to fill it in. And I'm actually going to want this in the front as well, so I'm going to bring this to the front. Again, filling all of that in, except for that guy. So this line segment we did, it's automatically connecting the two and filling it. So I'm just going to leave that without a filling. Group that, bring it back up into the cluster. And filling that. Oh. There we go, much better. So now I'm just going to play around, moving things out. Moving this over, down, and over. I might make that a little bit smaller. So this here, this is just a lot of fine tuning, and you can decide how much overlap of things you want, where you want to tuck a couple things in. But pretty much this could work, and it's kind of interesting how it can go back and forth and almost flip horizontally. So how you read it is it would be where the midpoints line up. So I'm just dragging guides out to show you. So you basically would put one up where the center is. And that's where you would read it along. So that means you would go here, here, and there, and not that and cutting backwards, because that center lines up before that center. So that's the only thing you really have to keep in mind. So it is a bit funky. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but I'll show you how to do the circle bit. Oops, deselected that a little too early. So, copy, paste. So I'm just going to make this starting here, group, 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 group. So here I'm going to do 2.4, 2.2, 2.2, well, just 2, 1.8, 1.6, 1.4, 1.2. So that's all right. So we can actually probably try and do it down by 3, 2, 1, 1.8, 1.5, 1.2, 0.9, 0.6. So now that we have that, Illustrator actually has spiral tool. So I can make just a nice little spiral here. And this is just going to be used as a guide. So I can take this guy, place it here. I think I did it on the outside. Is how I did it before, not along the center. That part there. Always trying to keep the distance between the two fairly similar. So it kind of looks like a weird little conch shell type thing, which you can always tighten up. So if I didn't want to do that, I could try doing it on the inside and see if that worked, or even on the line. But then you run into some overlap, or you could just say, I don't even want to have to deal with it. And just kind of space it out yourself. and see what you came up with. Something like that, if you wanted to. It's a bit bizarre, but after a little bit of tightening up everything, these tend to work better for a bit longer syllables, or you could even shrink this down so that it's not as prominent. And then you have something kind of nice. Kind of nice, not super amazing. But again, I would copy this at the top, paste it, and just drag it down here. And typically I put this down at the bottom so that you can see everything. And then in the end, I just bring it up. We'll see what 12 inches across is. Whatever pretty much fills the space so that you can get as high res as possible. I decided I don't really care for that one, so I'm going to bump this up to 15. See how that looks. Center it. Bring it up a little bit. And hello, I'm the doctor. Going in. Just making it a bit smaller. So we'll do 17 inches wide. Which means the center's 8.5. There we go. So there's hello, I'm the doctor. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Hope it made sense. Hope I made sense, and hopefully this recorded okay. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all your support and interest into my system. Thank you very much. Bye.